what the criticism is, and this is, I think the criticism should be worse, but the criticism a lot of people have made is the IPCC, the research is good, synthesis is good, but the summary is really bad. The summary for policymakers. So if you read the reports, the summary does not reflect the reports accurately.
Right.
And that is true. That is for sure true. And it is really bad. And then the media further distort it. But the reports themselves are totally bad in terms of their method for the very reason I mentioned. They ignore the benefits of fossil fuels. And the number one unforgivable thing that they do is they ignore what I call the climate mastery benefits of fossil fuels. Because fossil fuels, people think of fossil fuels and climate, and their main thing is, oh, we'll burn fossil fuels, and that'll release greenhouse gases, and that'll warm the climate, which I think to some extent is true. But what are we using the energy for? One of the main things we use energy for is to protect ourselves against climate. So of course you think about, people don't even think about this, but even heating cold areas, that saves countless millions of lives a year, or cooling hot areas. But my favorite example is drought, because drought is historically the largest killer of people, having insufficient water. So it's the biggest climate-related disaster because of, people can die of thirst and they can also just not have crops. And what fossil fuels do is, even if you have a drought-ridden area, what you can do is you can irrigate, you can bring water from where it is to where it isn't. And so you can have really good crop growth even in a drought, in a drought-filled area. And you can also take food from a place with a good harvest and bring it to a place that's suffering from drought. And the consequence of this is that we are 1/100th, even less than this, but 1/100th as likely to die from drought today as we were 100 years ago.
Right.
So think about that. We're over 100 times safer from drought. And more broadly, if you look at every climate-related disaster, we're overall 98% safer from climate-related disasters. So temperature extremes, storms, floods. And yet, guess how many times the IPCC mentions the fact that we have a radical decline in climate-related disaster deaths and that fossil fuels are a key cause?
Probably rarely, if not at all.
Never.